Hey, hi everyone. So, welcome back to the session. In this recording, we'll be discussing about forms. That's nothing but the way how we go and correct certain inputs from the UI level. Okay. So, before landing into that particular one, if you remember in the last recording, we discussed about building a resume over there, and we discussed about like how we can just go and add certain anchor tags. That's nothing but the link on your resume or in a web application, correct? So it was something looking in this particular way. So our application was something the clone of our resume on the web page over here. So this many contents as of now. And if you know, like if you, let's say in your application or your resume, apart from your work experience, you can even mention something called your project as well, right? Let's say if you have some project details over here, and if you want to go and link that particular project detail to your GitHub account, even that's something you can achieve it over here. Okay, so you can even do that particular one with the help of your anchor tags. You can do that particular one. So for that, let's just say before going ahead with something called connect with me here, I will just create an heading tag over here. So let me see what was the heading we were using here. So let's maintain a similar kind of fonts. So I would like to go with H2 or H3 accordingly. Yeah, it's H2 over here. So I'll copy the same thing, and in our case right now we'll have a project details over here. Okay, so let's just go and I will just come back over here. Let's say we want to have H2 tag heading 2, and then let's say I want to have something called project details over here. You can have as many number of projects as of in your resume, but for time being I just have few projects over here. So let's say I will go with an unordered list over here, and for how many instances I want to have it for somewhere around, let's say I want to have only 2 projects as of now. You can have it as many number of times you wish. Let's say I want to have li for how many times I want to have it for 2 times over here. So let's say unordered list with 2 times over here. Okay, so I just got that particular structure, and let's just go ahead here and I will just go with the very first project over here. So let's say the very first project is nothing but about our, let's say I have a project called as Zomato clone over here. So I just go with the Zomato clone, and the second project I want to go and have it about our, let's say book my show clone. You can have any sort of projects, but yeah, let's have these many 2 things over here. And if I just go back to my output over here, so you should be getting those 2 things on the project details here, right? So we just got that project details. Let's say within this project details, I want to have some good amount of description. Okay, so for that, let's go back to editor. And again, within this particular li, I want to have one more ul over here. That's nothing but one more ordered list. And I want to have 2 different lines of description on the project. Okay, so let's say ul greater than li followed by 2 different times. I want to have some dummy content, so I just go with lorem of 40. Same over here, let's say lorem of 40 over here. Similarly, I want to have it on the other side as well. That's nothing but in the book my show clone as well. So I just go here again. Let's say I want to have a ul for li, and I want to have it for 3 different lines. Okay, so you can just split accordingly. And let's say I want to have lorem of somewhere around 25 words over here. And for this one, I would like to go with lorem of 40. Similarly, lorem of some random numbers. Let's say 45 over here. And now if we just go back to our output, okay, so let's just go back to our UI in order to see how exactly it's reflecting over this. So we just got our project details over here, right? So now the question over here, so rather than just displaying this particular contents, we can even make our resume quite attractive for the recruiter. That's nothing but the moment they click on this Zomato clone, I want it to load my Zomato clone project over there, or I want to show my Zomato clone GitHub repo link over there. How is it possible? For that, let me just go to the browser and I just open my GitHub. So I just write my complete name over here. So I will just go ahead and write my complete name, and I'll open my GitHub over here. So let's just quickly open our GitHub, and then we will get our project linked over. So I'll just go to my GitHub ID. Let's go with the very first one. This is my GitHub over here. And again, you don't need to be connected to your GitHub or something. That's totally fine. So by default, we'll be in the overview section. So we need to switch back to repositories over here. And in the repo, let's say I want to have the first one over here. So let's assume this is the first project. So for that, I will right click here and I will copy the link address. And then let's just go back. As of now, I'm just linking some dummy projects here. And I just go back to Zomato clone over here. And I just say, rather than displaying the Zomato clone in this way, I want to have an anchor tag over here. So let's say anchor. and I will paste a particular link over here, and let's have our Zomato clone. Let's have a Zomato clone within this anchor. You can either wrap it directly or you can even wrap it under a paragraph tag and you can write, even that works fine over here. Similarly, let's say I want to have it for one more time for book my show clone application as well. So I just say I want one more anchor tag over here. For this thing, I'll go with a different repo. So let me just say I want to go with this particular one, and I just copy this particular image address. Okay, so let's just go ahead and copy that image address. Now let's just go back to the editor, and then I just paste that particular link over here. So let's wrap our book my show clone under this anchor tag over here. So now if we just go back to our UI in order to see the output over here. So now if we can see, we just got that particular projects in a perfect way. So now if I just go and if I click on the Zomato clone, it will load the Zomato clone repo link on my GitHub over there. So if you can see, it's just directing to GitHub over there and to my ID, and it's within that particular repo as well. Correct? It's within Rohan1917 over here. Similarly, if you want to go for the other repo, okay, the other repo was something called demo over here, right? Demo project. So that's nothing but if I click on book my show clone, we would be navigating to our demo project. See, it directly took me to that particular repo as well, not on the overview level. It directly went to our repo in the GitHub over there. So that's the beauty of making your resume and linking your projects or any other stuffs accordingly. Okay, you can even link your LinkedIn and many other stuffs like the way how we're linking our email ID, phone number, GitHub. Okay, you can write a direct link for your GitHub as well, and so on accordingly. So how to write a direct link for your GitHub? So if we just go ahead here, let's go, come back to overview. And if you can see, we have the GitHub ID here, right? So if I just copy this particular one, let me copy this. And then if I just go ahead here, so we have a GitHub here, right? So I just come back to that GitHub over there. So let's search for that particular GitHub. So we do have a GitHub over here. So I will just say we want to have an anchor tag over here. Let's say anchor, and I just paste this particular URL, and then I will wrap this content, whatever we have called as GitHub over here. I just wrote some dummy content, so you can write your name as well. So I just say GitHub this particular one, and now if I just go back to my output and if I click on this thing, see it's an hyperlink right now. So I'm able to click on this thing, it will directly take me to my GitHub over there so that the recruiters can directly go and have a look on what all projects I have done so far over here. We can even host our applications on the GitHub as well. We'll be talking about that in the upcoming recordings. But for time being, yeah, that's how we can just go and link your projects in your resume to your GitHub account over there. Okay, so now let's just come back. So we'll be discussing about the forms. That's nothing but the way how we collect our input from the clients or from the end users over here. So for that, we do have a form in the HTML. We'll just go and discuss about input tags over here. So I would like to create a different file over here. Let's say I want to create a file name called as forms.html. You can rename it as per your convenience. So let's just go ahead here and I'll stop the server, the one which is running on port 5500. Let's stop it as of now, and then I will just get a default boilerplate over here. So let's get a basic boilerplate, and then we will just go ahead here. Let's say here we have to discuss about forms in HTML over here. Okay, let's write a heading. I just want to say H2 and I just go with forms in HTML. Okay, and then we'll just run our output, and then we'll just go ahead with the side by side what exactly is happening over here. So let's click on that go live option in order to start your live server over here. So we got the same thing on our tab name as well. That's nothing but forms in HTML, and the heading tag has been reflecting as we expected over here. So in order to collect certain inputs from the end users or from our clients over here with the help of our web page, we do have forms in the HTML with the help of which we can directly go and collect the user input over here. The user input is most often sent to a server for processing. We can process it as per our convenience. Here are the most usually elements what we'll be discussing over here. So let's get started. In order to collect an input over here, so I can directly go and we do have a form over here. So let's write a form, and then we can see we got a default attribute called as an action over here, which indicates the moment once we click on submit for this particular entire form, what is the next thing or how exactly we want to process that particular user information what we are collecting in this form over there. So for that we have an action where we can directly go and we can validate, or we can specifically say, okay, I want to go and process this particular data in the backend with this particular information. But right now, let's not come back to action. We'll discuss about this action the moment we get started with JavaScript over there. But for time being, yeah, let's keep it blank, and then we'll go within our form over here. Let's say I want to get an input window on my screen right now. So I'll just go ahead and I just say I want to have a input tag on the screen with the help of which we can directly go and collect some input from our clients over here. So I will just go with this particular input over here where we can see with the emit abbreviation, I am getting a default attribute again called as type as text over here, indicating that we are collecting certain text on the screen here. And again, this is a self-closing tag. We don't need to specify a explicit closing tag for the input. It's always a self-closing. Even you can go and you can make in the other way as well. That's nothing but we can still write in this particular way as well. Okay, we can specifically close that as well. But again, it's not a recommended way. Since we don't have anything to display in between, we can directly go with the self-closing tag over there. Okay, now if we just go back to output over here in order to see what exactly is happening. So we just got a plain box on the screen, right? Where we can directly go and we can write certain contents here. See, let me write my name and I just say certain contents here. Correct. So we do have certain characters restrictions here. So by default, we can expect some 30 different types of characters or 30 alphabets on the screen, and we can just go ahead accordingly. Okay. But we can even explicitly split and say, hey, I want to go with the minimum characters of so and so and the maximum characters of so and so over there as well. So how is it possible? For that, we do have some attributes where I can directly go and I can just say we do have an attribute called minimum length where I can specifically say if for this particular input window, I am expecting a minimum length of 5 characters over there. So now at least 5 characters is required when we want to process that particular information over there. So now I can just go and I can write as many number of contents, but the minimum is something called 5 characters what we will be expecting on the screen over here. Similarly, we can have a threshold value as well. That's nothing but we can limit the number of characters with the help of max length attribute as well. So where I can directly go and I can say a maximum length of 12 is required over here. Again, this minimum length and maximum length what we have is an attribute. These are totally optional. You can either have or you guys can skip it accordingly on the screen. Okay, so now if I just go back to my UI, we're not specifically sure, right, what exactly to enter in this particular box or in this particular form here, correct? So for that, we need to display certain content in front of the screen so that the users can see and they can directly go and enter that particular required value over there. So let's say I want to display to enter your name over there. Let's say enter your first name. Now, if I just go back, I'm specifically saying enter your first name in front of that particular input, right? So we just got a particular context on the screen on our window stating enter your first name. So I can directly go and I can write my first name over here. Let's say ABC over here, correct? So I can directly go and specify my name over here. And if you can see the moment I hover on this particular input box, I'm getting a pop-up here stating please lengthen this text to 5 characters or more. You are currently using 3 characters, indicating hey boss, please go with 5 characters at least, since we have a required condition here specifying that I am expecting a minimum length of 5 over there. Okay, that's how we can explicitly give certain conditions here. So now let's write 5 different types of words. Let's say, 5 different types of characters. So let's say A, B, C, D, E. And now if I hover, see, we are no longer getting that particular message or the pop-up window on the screen. Let's go more than 5 right now. So I'll just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now if I hover on this thing, we should be getting some other contents on the screen as well, right? Indicating you can even make it as a mandatory and you can just proceed with that particular field as well. So if we just go to the forms, right, we always expect certain mandatory fields indicating that your clients that particular one, indicating your clients can't skip that particular. See, I'm just exceeding more than this particular number of characters, but I'm not able to enter the contents over there. Why? Because the maximum length is 12 over here. And even if I'm writing more than 12 words, okay, more than 12 words, it's not accepting any input going forward, indicating that you already exceeded 12 different types of characters. So if you enter something on the top of this, it will never gonna consider. By default, if you don't specify minimum length and maximum length, that number of characters it will gonna take will be 30 characters over there. Okay, and again, we can override that with the help of our JS functionality and we can proceed accordingly. Similarly, now if I just hover on my output on this particular input box over here, I'm not getting any message indicating whether it's a mandatory field or not, right? So you can even go ahead and you can even specify a attribute called as required, indicating it's a mandatory field over there. So now if I just go back to my output and if I hover on this thing, You can see we just got a one more pop-up stating please fill out this field, indicating it's a mandatory field what we are having over here. Okay, that's how we can just go and we can explicitly write certain different attributes for our simple input tag over here. Okay, again the type is equals to text. Even if you remove this particular one, it will still gonna work as a default text only. Okay, by default whether you specify type is equals to text or not, it will always be the same on the screen. So if I just go back, it will still accept my characters or the text on the screen. Okay, so that's the default functionality. So by default the type will be always equal to text over here. But again, there's a one more catch here. If we can see, I wrote something called enter your first name over here, but it's not been wrapped up among any sort of tags over here, right? It's not been wrapped up among any sort of tags. So what we can say, okay, we do know about something called paragraph. So let's say we can go and we can have a paragraph and we can wrap it over here. It's always a standard good practice to wrap any contents which you want to show on the screen between any sort of tags on the screen. So now if I just go ahead here, so I got enter your first name over here, but the input window what I was getting side by side now started floating on the next line over here, right? Now started floating on the next line here. But as per my way or as per my insights, what you're expecting over here, it should be falling on the same line only, right? Why is it going to the next line over here? It's because of a functionality called as scoping functionality what we have in our HTML and CSS over here. So the paragraph tag what we are having here, it will gonna take the block scope over here. What's meant by block scope? Block scope simply indicates it will gonna take the entire screen width over here. So if you can see, the moment I hover on paragraph, it's taking the entire width of the screen, correct? That's the reason this input tag, even though if it's an inline scope, it's falling on the next line over here. So I can just go and click on this particular one and we can start hovering on the particular tag. See, the paragraph is taking the entire width here. That's the reason it's falling on the next line here. Then how do we overcome that particular one? For that, we do have a specific tag over here called as label tag. Rather than going with the paragraph tag called as label. As the name label, it will be a label for the particular input tag over here. See, we do have label and now, okay, that's the beauty of our label tag. Now we do have some attributes what we got by default with our label tag here, right? We got an attribute called for and we do have some value. So let's skip it as of now. I'll come back to the particular one. We always bind this label with the input tag with the help of an ID attribute. We'll come back to that particular one in some time. But yeah, for time being, let's go and discuss about different input tags over here. So let's say I want to have one more label here. So I just say label and now I want to display or collect something called last name here. Let's say enter your last name. Or we can do one thing. Let's say I don't want to mention enter and all this stuff. Let's say first name and last name on the screen. Okay, that should be the better way. So now I just go ahead here and I just say I want to have a one more input tag. So let's say input and then I will just hit on. See, the minimum length, maximum length and required all are an optional thing. So I'm not going with those things. I just wanted to give some insights on the same over there. Okay, so now if we come back to the first name, you can see we're getting a please fill out this field suggestion or a pop-up. Whereas when I hover on the last name, I am not getting any such pop-up or a suggestion on the screen. Why is that so? It's very clear. For the first name, we are having a mandatory attribute called as required, indicating that this field is a mandatory one. So the clients can't skip a field, okay, indicating it's a mandatory one. So we are not getting it for the last name. The main reason because we haven't wrote the required attribute in the last name over here. That's the beauty of having required attributes over there. Okay, so now let's just go and we do have different types of input tags. Okay, as of now we discussed about type as text, right? In order to understand what are the different types we have here, so you can directly go to the browser and just search input types MDN. Okay, better go with the MDN. That's nothing but Mozilla Developer Network, where we get the complete insights about our different tags of our HTML over there. Again, it's recommended to visit this site in order to get the complete insights about our different types of input tags what we have here. So if we can see, we have a label and we have some for value, and even here we're restricting the number of minimum length and maximum number with the help of the characters over here. And we do have a required as a mandatory field, and that's how we can just proceed. So if we can see, we have a button tag, we do have a checkbox over. We can get our color as well. We can get that input type as date time, correct email, file. We can collect certain files so that we can go and upload those things, hidden, month, number, and so on and so forth. We do have many things like password, radio, range, checkbox, okay, select option, URL, and many different types of things over here. Okay, now let's come back. We'll just go with the further different input tags in order to understand how we can go and use them in a more efficient way over here. So now let's say I want to collect age of my user over here. So for that, let's go with a label. Let's go with a label. I want to collect the age from the user over here. So let's say label, and I will just say I want to get the age of the user over here. So let's say age, and then let's go to input over here. And now if I just say the type as text, that's nothing but the default one what we get over here. And now if I just say the same thing on the screen, and if we go back to our UI and let's go back to our outputs over here, and yeah, let's do one thing. Let's get the age on the next line over here. So in order to get it on the next line, we do use the styles, but for time being, since we haven't discussed BR tag over here, that's nothing but break. Let's say I want to have two different line breaks over here, and then I want to display about our age over there. So let's get that particular one, and then I just go back over here. So if we can see, I got an age over here, right? What do we expect when it comes to age over here? As general, we do expect something called certain number on the screen over here. But now if I just go ahead within the age and if I start writing some characters over here, so we can see it's even expecting certain characters as well, right? That's not a standard practice. We do just expect only a number over here in the age frame. So how is it possible? For that, we can directly go back to editor. Rather than displaying the type as text for this particular input, I can just update it with the help of a value called number over here. So now if I just go back to my output over here, and then if I just start entering certain characters here, so it's not considering any characters from the UI right now. So if I start writing some numbers, you can see it's specifically taking the numbers over here. At the same time, we can see we do have an increment and decrement operators with the help of which we can either increment or we can either decrement it accordingly on the UI. So that's the beauty of specifically saying the type as number, so that we can only expect the numbers from the UI over there. Let's say I want to have one more field. Let's go with a different input type over here. Let's say label, and I want to go with an email over here. Okay, so let's say I want to go with the email, so that I want to collect the email from the clients over here. So let's say email, and then let's just go ahead here. So we'll specifically say input, and this time rather than saying the type as text, I can specifically go and I can say it as an email over here. Okay, but yeah, before that, let's go back to our UI. And if you can see, the moment I click on this particular one, I'm not getting any suggestions indicating I can write some personal alphabets or characters, not even an email ID over there. But if I want some suggestions, or if I want to get some insights specifically stating to my browser, hey boss, this is not just a simple text over here, it's something where we need to expect certain email ID from the clients over there. So for that, we can update the value to email over, or from text to email over there. And now if I just go back to output over here, and then if I just click on this thing, okay, so now let's click on that particular email over here. So it will only expect something called the email from the clients over here. So now we can only expect something called the email from the clients over here. Okay, based on your browser permissions, it can even load the available email IDs on your Windows over there. Okay, that's the beauty of having your email. Similarly, let's say I want to correct the date here. Let's say I want to correct the date. Let's say label, and let's say date of joining. Okay, let's assume we are using some application where I want to know when that particular client has been joined our application. So for that, I want to go with the DOG, date of joining. So for that, let's go with the input over here. Let's say input, and then rather than going with the type as text, I can specifically say it as date over here. We can either go with the date, date time, or date time local, whatsoever. And if I just go back to output over here, let's go back to output. And if we can see the date of joining, we got the calendar over here, right? So now I can click on this particular calendar and we can just go and we can select the date accordingly over there. It's again in DD, YY format over here. So we can directly go for any number of dates and we can just go and select our date as per our convenient over here. Okay, that's the beauty of our DOG. That's nothing but with the help of a type as date, we can specifically get the date on the screen over there. Now, at some point of time, we need to go and enter our passwords as well, right? There are certain forms where we do expect certain passwords from the client over there. So how can we consider that particular password on the screen? So for that, let's say I want to have two more BRs over here, breaks, and let's write a label indicating, please enter your password on the screen here. Okay, let's say I want to have a label in order to collect the password from this user. Okay, so let's just go ahead here and then Okay, so for that, let's just go here and I will just go with the password as a content over here. Let's say I want to display the label as password over here, and then let's have an input tag. So I will just go with the input over here in order to get an input where we can correct some content on the screen over here. So I just go with the type as text, and then if I just go back to my output over here, and if you can see the moment I start writing my password, okay, let's say my password is 1234. So what's happening now? The password what I'm writing here, it's not in an encrypted way, right? It's not being masked over here. So that's nothing but any password from my screen over here. So if you want to go and make that particular password in an encrypted or in a masked way over here, so for that we do have a value for type called as password over here. So I can directly go and change the value from type text to password over here. So now what will happen if I just say 1234? So you can see it's been in a bullet like structure over here. So it's no longer visible for the clients over here. It's no longer visible for the other screen over here. So if we just go and right click, and if I just go back to inspect over here in order to see what exactly is happening for the particular password, you can just see that particular value in an encrypted way only, but we can even overwrite with that particular value over here. So let's say I want to go with the type, and let's say I want to highlight the password here. So if you can see, the type is equals to password here. Let's change the password value from type value from password to text here, and then we can see that particular password as well. So you can see the moment I change the value from type is equals to text, we are getting that 1234 over here. But again, it should not be in a text way here, it should be in a password only. Then we can see it's been masked over here. That's the beauty of our type is equals to password here. Okay, so we discussed about type as simple text and even about a number, email, date, and password over here. And we do discussed about different types of attributes such as minimum length and maximum length, and even about a required field over here. Now we'll discuss about one more other different type of input tag what we have in the HTML over here. Let's say if I want to select any one out of multiple choice question. Okay, let's say we do know select one out of multiple options. How is it possible? In order to select any one specific out of multiple options, we do have a radio button in our HTML. We do have a radio button in our HTML. So for that, let's say I want to have a paragraph, and let's say enter your, I want to get something called the shirt size of my user over here. So for that, I just go with enter your shirt size. Okay, let's just go, and I want to collect something called the shirt size from my user over here. So for that, let's say label, and I want to display this. Firstly, I will go with an input tag in order to show what exactly we need to do here. So if we can see till now, we are getting the type as text here, right? The moment I say type is equals to text, we'll get a square box in order to collect the output on the UI. But again, we don't need a particular one. In order to get a radio like button, we need to change the type from text to radio over here. So now if I just go back to output, we can see we just got an option on the screen, correct? So now I can just go and check or uncheck that particular option on the screen here. That's the beauty of type is equals to radio. So now I'll just go ahead with this particular type as radio for this input, and let's just display the label for this particular one. So I will just say I want to have a label, and let's specify the label for this one as something called small size. Let's say I want to display it as small size. Similarly, I want to have it for a few more times. Let's say for 2 more times. Let's copy paste it over here, and I will just go this one for the, my bad, it should be small. Again, let's go with the second one. I just go with a medium size over here, and large or extra large you can just specify accordingly, but for timing 3 should be a better one over here. So now if I just go back to my output over here, see I just got enter your shirt size, followed by we can just go and we can select any one out of these 3 particular options. So why do we use radio? In order to make sure collect any one input from the multiple choice question over there. Okay, in order to collect any one output from the multiple options over there. But right now what's happening, I'm able to click on this name small size, even I'm able to click on this medium size, even I'm able to click on this large size. It's not a correct way, right? So we expected that the client should be able to hit on any one out of the multiple options what we have on the screen here. So how is that possible? So how can we make that particular one trigger only for one variable over here? So for that, we do have a special attribute called as name over here. So we don't need to mention a name attribute for all these 3 things, indicating all these 3 are single input. Out of that, I can just specifically select any one as per the client requirement. So we need to group all these 3 input tags. How is it possible? We can group them with the help of our input one more attribute called as name attribute over here. So for that, I need to write it on all 3 input tags. So let me write in a single go. I will just click on the very first line, and let's hit on Control plus Alt plus down key. and then I will start writing, okay, I want to have a name attribute, and let's specify the name. I will just say shirt size over here. You can write any value, but please make sure the value should be same in all the three inputs over here. It should not be different values, it should be same in all the three inputs over here, so that we can select any one out of the given options. So it's always a mandatory that we need to have something called a value for this particular name, and it should be a same unique value for all the three over here. So now if I just save this particular one, and now if I just go back to output over here, so now if I just go back to my output, we can see I am able to select any one out of these three options here. So that's the real use case of our radio button here, right? So it's working as expected. Now the question comes, what if I'm using different value for these things? Let's say I'm using name shirt size 1. Let's say I'm using 2 over here. And then the radio functionality won't work as expected over here. Why? Because the name value is different. So it's no longer grouped over here. So now I can still able to select multiple options out of multiple options. That's not the correct way. So for that, we need to group them with the same value for all these three input tags over there. So for that, it's always a standard practice to go and use that particular name attribute, and we need to group them over here. So now the question comes, let's go back to output, and we got our radio button as expected. So now if you can see, the moment I hit on medium size, it's clicking on that particular button, right? But what if there are certain users who are not able to click specifically on the radio button? Let's say on click of large size, or on click of medium size, or on click of small size, I want that particular button to be checkmarked. So right now if I'm clicking on this large size, but it's not checking that particular button, right? So how is it achievable? For that, we can directly go and use our for attribute. If we see on the top, we wrote about for, but we haven't explicitly used what exactly is that particular for over here, right? So now if I just go ahead here, let's say I want to write for all these three things. So I just say for all these three. Okay, we do have for over here, so indicating that we have a label for. So what's this for attribute? The for attribute, what we have over here in this particular label, it will gonna define that this label is for this particular input. We mainly use our for and id here. So we do have a for attribute in the label, and similarly we'll be having one more attribute called id in the input, which will be always unique as the name id. It will always gonna be unique for that particular input. So we can bind this label for this particular input with the help of id over there. We can bind this label is for this particular input only. Similarly, this label is for this particular input only. So how can we bind? With the help of this particular for and id attributes over here. So let's say I want to have some value here. So I just say the value for this particular label is small. So I need to go and I need to bind it with the help of an id attribute what we have in the input over here. So let's say id, and you need to write the same value what you're writing in the for value over here. So let's say small over here. So now if I just go back to my output over here. So now if I click on the small size, see, the radio button is getting check marked over here. Whereas if I click on the medium size, it's not getting check marked. Similarly, if I click on this large size, it's not getting check marked. Why? Because I haven't wrote that particular for id over here. So let's write that as well. So let's say for, I'll just go with a large. I will write the same thing over here. So let's say id. I will just say it as large over here. Similarly, let's go at the last thing. My bad, it should be medium. So let's go at here and I will just say id, and let's say it as large over here. So let's go, and again I just specify it as large over here. So now if I just go back to my output over here, and then if you can see, even if I click on medium size, it's still selecting that particular option as an output over here. So that's the beauty of your for and id attribute what we have in our label and input tags here. So it's not just only used to bind the label with the input tag, the for and the id, we even use it to different things as well. So what is the other thing what we went apart from the binding over here? So the other thing was, if the clients are clicking on this particular contents rather than clicking on this radio button, check mark them with the help of this particular one. Similarly, if the clients are using screen reader, it will read out that particular option when we have that label for id value over there. Okay, there are three test case uses for this particular for and id. The first is find that label for that particular input, whereas the second one, if my clients are using screen reader, then it will gonna read out that particular label is for this particular id. Similarly, when they click on that particular contents in front of that particular radio buttons, it will gonna select that as an output over there. Okay, so these are the three different types of use cases what we have our label for id over here. Similarly, let's go ahead here. So if you can see over other things as well, right? We have first name, last name, and other things on the UI. So the way how we got, when we click on the small size, I was able to click or select this particular radio button, right? Similarly, when I click on this content, I was able to select that checkbox as well. or that particular radio button. Similarly, when I hit on first name, okay, I want to select by default this particular input window. It's not happening right now, correct? When I hit on last name, I want my input window to be highlighted over there. So how is it possible? Even for that, we can go and use a for ID over here. So let's say I want to go and I just say f name here, indicating first name for this particular label. And now I can directly go and you can use an attribute called as ID here in order to bind that this label is for this particular ID only. So for that, I just write the same value again. Let's say f name. And then if we just go back to our output over here, let's go on first name here. It will start highlighting me for that particular input box, stating like you can directly go and write it over here. So that's the beauty of your first name and last name over here. See, the moment I click on first name, it's highlighting me over here. Whereas if I click on last name, it's not highlighting over here. But if I click on first name content, it's highlighting that particular input box. Correct? How is it possible? It's all with the help of that particular for and ID over here. So I just kept for and ID blank in other fields. So you can directly go and fill it out over here as well. Let's say I want to have L name indicating last name. And I want to have, you can write as per your convenient. Okay, you can write whatever values you want to wish over there. You can write it out accordingly. Let's say L name over here. And now if I just go back to my output, and even on click of this last name over here, see, it's highlighting me that particular input box. So if I click on first name, it's highlighting that input box. If I click on last name, it's highlighting that input box. Whereas for age and email, it's not highlighting because we haven't defined what is the value we are writing for that particular ID over there. That's nothing but we are not binding this label for this input over there. So how to bind? We have an attribute called for attribute in the label and ID attribute in the input, and the value should remain same for both of those things. And again, let's say there are certain fields where we want to make sure that the client should not fill that particular value over there. So we can even disable that as well. So how is it possible? In order to disable certain things, let's say I want to disable last name as of now. So for that, I just go ahead here and we do have an attribute called as disabled. We do have an attribute called as disabled. So if I just say disabled, and now if I just go back to my output over here, and if you can see the last name field just got disabled over here. So even on click, it's not highlighting me over there. So it's not allowing the user to collect certain input from the last name over there, indicating that this input has been disabled over there. So that's how we can go and disable certain fields on the screen as well. We can make certain fields mandatory with the help of required and disable with the help of disabled attributes over there. At the same point of time, let's say I want to have one more thing. Let's say I want to have a middle name over here. So let me copy the same and let's write it over here. So let's say it's for middle name, and I will just say it as a middle name over here. Let's say the for as yum name indicating middle name, and let's make it as not disabled so that I want to show certain contents on the screen. So now if we just go here, so we got middle name over here, right? Let's say by default I want to have some middle name on the screen here. Let's say by default I want to have certain middle name for all the users over here. So how is it possible? So I can directly go and I can specify a value attribute called as value over here, and you can write certain value as of now. Let's say I want to have a value called as RK over here. So let's say I have a value called as RK. And now if I just go back to my output, so by default, if you see the moment I just go back to my screen, in the middle name, we are getting it RK. It does not mean we can't override. We can still override and we can do whatever stuff we want. But as we refresh our application, by default, it will always gonna get that particular value over there. Similarly, can we make certain radio button selected by default over here, the way how we have small size, medium size and large size? Can we make certain things selected by default? Yes, it's possible. How is it possible? So for that, we do have an attribute called as checked over here. Let's say by default, I want to go with the medium size for the users over here. So for that, I can just go and use an attribute called as checked for that particular medium size here. So now if I just go back to my output over here, see, on refresh, by default, medium is getting selected here. It does not mean we can't override. Yes, you can still override. You can go to large or small size accordingly. But on refresh, it will directly come back to medium size over there. So that's how you can make certain contents default with the help of your checked as an attribute in your radio buttons. Similarly, what if you want to collect something called the color from the user input over here? Let's say I want to collect the user to enter which color shirt they want to select over here. So for that, let's write some break tags in order to get some good space over here. And then I will just go ahead. Let's say I want to have a label tag over here. And let's say I want to go and get the label as color. And let's say, please select the color for your shirt. Let's say I want to ask the user to select the color for their particular shirt over here. So for that, I want to go with input. Let's say we do have an input tag over here, and then we do have a for attribute over here. In order to bind that, we'll go with the ID, and let's say color. It's always a better practice to bind And then now I don't want to go and specifically say type as text over here. We do have color as our type as well. So now the moment I just say the type as color over here, so if we can see, I just got please select the color for your